Hold on a sec. Let me find the chapter. You know, anytime I have a pause like this, if you got a joke, you can tell it. But too late, I've got the chapter. All right, the federal courts, right? 3 branches of government. We've looked at the executive branch, the presidency. We've looked at the legislative branch, Congress. Now the federal court system, which entails the Supreme Court of the United States, along with 12 regional federal courts, 94 federal district courts, then all of your state courts, and then all of your lower level courts like county courts. And then even with bigger cities, you would have city courts. I would imagine that Heavener and Muldrow and Panama don't have city courts, right? You get in trouble and you get put in the city jail, and you got to save your time. But then if you get in trouble with the county, you get sent to Panama and Heavener would be sent to Poto jail. What would be the county seat of Muldrow? Is Muldrow the county seat of your county? What city is? Salisaw? So that'd be your county court. All right, the court system. Anybody here aspiring to be a lawyer or a judge someday? Lawyers make some good cash. So if you want to make money, and lawyers can make a difference, right? Fighting crime but anyway, if you even have a hint of this is what you might want to do, you'll want to really pay close attention to this. So, all right, so we'll alternate between the slides and the chapter. So let's go now back to the slides. All right, the federal court system. All right, our book is going to highlight 2 types of legal disputes. You have criminal cases and civil cases. So that means there are criminal laws and civil laws. Criminal laws deal with crimes that would be against the safety and well-being of the public. I'm trying to think of a good example that we have recently witnessed in our nation. Okay. The school shooting in Uvalde, Texas back in May, that was that fell under criminal law because it was a crime against the health and the well-being of the public. Criminal laws cases deal with cases that threaten liberty, freedom of individuals and of the public in general. Those who commit these crimes have a right to have an attorney provided by the government if they cannot afford their own attorney. And then they have a right to trial by a trial of a jury of their peers. So where does that go back to? The right to have representation and the right to have a trial by jury. How far back does that go to in American history? Thinking about our government class. What was that old scoundrel King George doing to our colonists?
Taxing without representation.
He was doing that, but think about court systems. Colonists who committed a crime sometimes would be taken to London to be tried. Soldiers like the ones in the Boston Massacre, if they committed a crime, instead of facing the courts in the colonies, would be taken to London. So Thomas Jefferson wrote about that in the Declaration of Independence, and we set up a system where people who are guilty would come before a judge or a court, wouldn't be dragged away, far away, and they would also be privy to a trial by their own peers, not by people who lived in a different location. Civil law cases deal with relations between individuals. So the criminal law case would be like the government versus somebody, okay? It's the government is the plaintiff, and they're accusing a defendant of a crime. Civil law cases are between individuals and their legal rights. And usually the punishment has to do with money. So here I can use the O.J. Simpson trials back in the 90s to illustrate this. O.J. Simpson, in his criminal case, California versus O.J. Simpson, he was found innocent of murdering his wife and her friend, and he was set free. But the family of the friend, his name was Ron Goldman. Ron Goldman's family sued, or they took O.J. Simpson to civil court. And the civil court found O.J. Simpson guilty, and he had to pay the Goldman family millions and millions of dollars. Now, that almost sounds like the Goldmans were money hungry, but they weren't. They were already a well-off family. They just wanted to hear somebody say O.J. Simpson is guilty, because they probably weren't going to see any of that money. O.J. Simpson, even though he had once been a football star and worked for a news organization, had to spend a lot of money in that criminal case on his lawyers. And so, but that's an example of the difference between a criminal case and a civil case. The civil case was the Goldman family versus O.J. Simpson. And it wasn't a murder case because he couldn't be tried for murder again, but it was in the sense that their rights as a father, as a sister, as a family, in their relationship to their sibling had been violated. Also, in a criminal law case, all 12 jurors, right, have to agree to being guilty or not guilty. All 12 jurors. If you have one juror who says, no, I don't think they're guilty, then you have a hung jury. In a civil law case, only 9 jurors have to agree to guilt. All right, statutory law. And this deals with the laws. This is the laws that are in criminal cases. Statutory law is laws that are written and formed by our legislative branch. And that's different than administrative law, which comes from the executive branch. And remember the bureaucracy. And then the common law, which comes by the judicial branch. Statutory laws can be created by governments on all levels, federal, state, and local. So some examples of statutory laws on your local level might be, I mentioned this before several weeks ago, and some of you, I think all of you mentioned that you don't know, or your cities don't have a law that when a semi truck comes into your city, they cannot use their Jake brakes. Usually you'll see a sign when you come into a city, no Jake brakes allowed. That would be an example of a local statutory law. It's a law that was made by the local government, but not by Congress.
Jake brakes and engine.
Say what?
I was gonna ask you what a Jake brake was, but Job just searched it up.
Okay. I know they're designed to help them slow down faster, but they're very, very loud. So do any of you know if your cities have a town ordinance like a town curfew?
I'm pretty sure ours is 11.
Panama's 11. What about
Yeah.
Muldrow and Heavener? I'm sorry, Camden, I keep seeing your first 3 letters of your name and I'm thinking Cameron, but does Heavener or Muldrow have a city ordinance curfew?
I don't think so.
No for Muldrow, huh? No curfew? Y'all can stay out late and cruise till morning?
I'm pretty sure our curfew's 10
10
for people under 18, yeah.
for people under 18. How about Heavener? Don't know. This is good. I'm getting the vibe that you guys don't stay out late and cruise and get in trouble. So that's good. So there's this really old movie from the 80s called Footloose. And you guys might have seen the new remake from a few years ago, which I won't see. But the Footloose movie from the 80s with Kevin Bacon was based on a town in Oklahoma that had a law that said no dances in town. And Footloose was this renegade movie where they got together a prom. Anyway, back to our subject at hand. All right, federal court system. You'll like this. When it comes to the United States federal courts, you have to remember courts, plural. We don't just have one federal court, AKA the Supreme Court. We actually have, as you'll notice here, after the Supreme Court of the land, you have 12, or I should say 13 appellate courts, which means Court of Appeals, 12 regional courts, and then one U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit. And then underneath that, you have some trial courts, 94 federal judicial district courts, or we would say U.S. district courts, along with a U.S. Court of International Trade and a U.S. Court of Federal Crimes. And these courts have 678 federal district judges. And then, along with those federal courts, you have some other courts that are outside of the judicial branch, but would be like a federal court. You have military courts. Anybody a fan of NCIS or the old show JAG, which is about those military courts? No? Okay, nobody a fan of court TV? I was a fan of an 80s show called Night Court, which was about New York City's court systems, but we're talking about military courts. We in Oklahoma know that there's another kind of court, right? There are Native American court systems in Oklahoma that are outside of the United States court system. Anybody in our class have Native American blood and you're registered as a Native American? Lacey is?
I am.
So if Lacey were to go out this Halloween and, you know, murder some people,
Oh, well, it happens every year. You know?
What?
she, okay, that's kind of a hard crime. Let's say carjack somebody's
She's
car.
kind of a veteran at this.
You would probably have to go before being registered as a tribal member. I'm assuming you're registered.
Yeah.
Okay, you would go before the tribal court.
So like Cherokee, or like
Whatever,
Osage.
whatever tribe you are.
That's pretty cool.
So, yeah, because you would not even think of murdering anybody.
Not Joe.
Okay. So we have a tax court and then some other courts on the federal level. This is just another slide showing you the flow of our court systems. So if someone were to steal a car in our state, they would first appear most likely at a county court. Hodo, for those of you from Heavener and Panama, and Salisaw for you Muldronians. And then let's say you're just absolutely sure you didn't steal that car. You know you didn't steal the car because you were somewhere else. And you were you were found guilty at the courthouse. You could then appeal to the state court. And let's say the state court found you guilty. Well, then you could then, you would first go to a state appeal court. Then you would try to appeal to the state Supreme Court. We have a state Supreme Court. Much like the federal Supreme Court, we have a state Supreme Court of 9 justices. And if they found you guilty, then you could appeal to a U.S. District Court. Or, yeah, I think it would be a U.S. District Court. Maybe not. Maybe not, since it's just carjacking. And that would be a state law. You would have to have committed some kind of federal law to be able to appeal to the federal district courts, and then maybe eventually go to the Supreme Court. All right, remember earlier I mentioned 12 regional circuits. Well, here is where those 12 regions are. And in case you're wondering where number 12 is, I believe it is the Washington, D.C. area right in here.
I thought you said 13 earlier.
Well, the 13th one is a Court of Appeals for the federal circuit.
Oh,
So that's probably going to also be in DC.
yeah.
But if you, if one of us committed a crime that would be a federal crime, let's say we stole somebody's mail out of their mailbox, because that's a federal offense. You could eventually end up in the District 10 Federal Court in Denver. So Oklahoma is in District 10.
That's what I like to see.
I could really go to jail for opening my grandma's mail.
Mhm.
It's crazy.
Did you not know that's illegal?
Yes, well, unless she gave you permission.
Well, she does, but
Okay,
sometimes gotta make sure that
Doesn't
it's
have a pipe
like
bomb in it.
not
but
important.
if you went out tonight and took a baseball bat to Job's mailbox, that could be a federal offense.
Why wouldn't I do that?
Oh, don't you remember that movie from Adam Sandler? What was that movie?
That used to be a sport that kids did, mailbox bashing.
It was the baseball movie where they were riding in the back of the truck and just went down the street. What?
Yeah.
Wait, what are you talking about?
Medicine.
Remember that
Golf.
movie Adam Sandler was in? And it was that baseball movie where they're all riding in the back of that
Waterboys?
red truck
Whatever.
and they're
Warmers?
smashing mailboxes.
Is it binge warmers?
Adam
Yeah,
Sandler
yeah,
was in a baseball movie?
Bench warmers.
I don't
Oh.
think Adam Sandler was in it though.
Yes,
No,
that
I'm
used to
sure
be a
that-
thing,
Actually,
and I don't want to hear of you guys starting it back up. You don't need to do that.
Encouraged by Jeff Bings.
No, I said I don't want to hear you doing it.
No, there's more people on Zoom.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure courts 12 and 13 are in DC. All right, so just as in the other branches, the federal courts and the court systems have checks and balances and limits on their power. Whatever decisions a court decides upon, it depends upon the executive branch and then the state and local officials to enforce their decisions. And usually they do, although in recent years and months, there's been talk about state attorney generals and local officials not enforcing laws that the Supreme Court might pass. I think in Kentucky, there was a woman at a county courthouse who said she would not admit, I'm trying to think of the right word. In 2015, after the Supreme Court legalized gay marriage, this county court clerk in Kentucky said she would not offer marriage certificates to gay couples in that county. So she was defying the Supreme Court ruling. She, of course, she got jail time for that. But that's one way to limit the court's power. Congress can get around a court ruling by passing a new law or changing a law that's ruled unconstitutional, or even amending the Constitution. The president is not the only government official that can be impeached. Federal judges and state judges can be impeached, so that's another check on their power. The Supreme Court or any federal court cannot decide that a law is unconstitutional unless the law has already been challenged in a lower court and it comes to that federal court on appeal. And again, courts can only accept cases that involve a federal question. This is big, and you need to remember this. Federal courts never consider guilt or innocence of a person. They only deal with if something is constitutional or not. Oh no, I didn't update my slide. All right, so this was the Supreme Court last year, but since last year, this guy here, Stephen Breyer, resigned, and he has been replaced by the first African-American woman. So I do have a picture of that court on your course homepage, right? So I'll show you that picture and we'll call it a day.
Mr. Binks, was that girl like
Her head Photoshop.
pasted on there? The one in the front row.
Oh, hold on a second. So here's the
It
new
always just
one.
looks off.
Here's the woman that replaced Breyer. Her last name is Jackson, but you're talking about my picture on my slide, right?
Yeah.
So indeed it was, because when I made that slide, they had not yet added her picture. So I had to get I had to get the original one. And
Oh,
but now listen, the only thing that's been photoshopped is her head, because she replaced another woman. So this was a little woman, and so you could see her chair. But one thing I just now noticed is you can see her old wrinkly hands. So
Yeah,
Uh,
it does not match.
what doesn't match? I thought the head did good.
She just looks out of place. I don't know. Just a
So on the website, on the homepage, I did have to put her picture here over Breyer, but you can see that Amy Comey's, that really was her color robe. You can see that the women get to pick their colors. So right now, you all are living in historic times, 5 men and 4 women. The first woman to be appointed was in the 80s. And so there's been 4 more women added, and actually 5, because the one lady, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, died last year. So any questions on that court content? All righty. Don't eat too much candy.
Don't smash mailboxes.
Don't smash mailboxes and don't carjack
Yep,
anything.
Jobs.
And we'll see you on Wednesday.